Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to examine a complex and often controversial subject: the psychological and sociological parallels between leftist indoctrination and Islamic extremist indoctrination. While these two ideologies differ radically in content and cultural origins, both employ remarkably similar methods in shaping belief, suppressing dissent, and fostering group loyalty. Our discussion is grounded in the analysis presented in The Similarities Between Leftist and Islamic Extremist Indoctrination, supported by recent scholarship on radicalization and extremist psychology. Let's begin with a working definition. Indoctrination is the process through which individuals are taught to accept a set of beliefs uncritically. Unlike education, which encourages questioning, indoctrination discourages it. Both leftist and Islamic extremist systems rely on this uncritical acceptance, the substitution for emotion for analysis, and belonging for inquiry. The paper identifies four primary mechanisms common to both. 1. Emotional appeals. 2. Demonization of opponents. 3. In-group solidarity. And 4. Manipulation of institutions. The first parallel is emotional appeal. Both ideologies mobilize powerful emotions, empathy, guilt, or anger, to bypass critical reasoning. Leftist movements often invoke social justice narratives to create moral urgency. Individuals are persuaded through empathy with victims of perceived oppression. Emotional engagement replaces rational evaluation. This produces what psychologist Steven Pinker calls moral inflation, where outrage itself becomes a measure of virtue. Islamic extremists, though ideologically distinct, use a similar emotional lever: grievance. By portraying the West as an oppressor of Muslims, recruiters frame violence as a moral duty. The sense of personal injustice and collective suffering becomes the emotional entry point for radicalization. In both cases, emotional manipulation replaces evidence with feelings. As Wolfowicz et al. 2021 note, radicalization is often driven not by ignorance, but by cognitive closure, the comfort of simple answers to complex problems. The second similarity is the demonization of the opposition. Indoctrination thrives on dividing the world into good versus evil. In leftist indoctrination, dissenters are branded as fascists, racists, or reactionaries. The moral framing is absolute. Those who disagree are not just wrong, but immoral. Islamic extremists use a similar binary: the faithful versus the infidels. The West, secularism, and even other Islamic sects are depicted as existential threats. The rhetorical dualism serves two purposes. First, it creates moral clarity for the believer. Second, it justifies hostility, even violence, toward perceived enemies. The START Center's comparative study, University of Maryland 2021, shows that both left-wing and Islamist movements employ moral polarization as a recruitment tool. The third mechanism is in-group solidarity. Every indoctrination system builds a psychological shelter, a place where members feel uniquely enlightened and morally superior. For leftist activists, solidarity forms around identity and activism, the movement. Protests, online communities, and social rituals reinforce the sense of belonging. Questioning the group's moral narrative risks ostracism. For Islamic extremists, in-group bonding is even more explicit. Shared rituals, secret communication channels, and martyr narratives build trust and dependency. Recruits often describe joining extremist cells as joining a family, a phenomenon documented extensively in radicalization studies. The source is provided in the description. In both movements, belonging precedes belief. Once the emotional bond is secure, ideology follows almost automatically. The fourth commonality is institutional manipulation. Leftist indoctrination often occurs through cultural institutions, academia, media, and education. These become vehicles for reinforcing a particular ideological orthodoxy. For example, when curriculum design or media framing excludes alternative perspectives, students and audiences are subtly taught that dissent equals immorality. Islamic extremists, in turn, infiltrate religious and educational institutions to control narratives. Madrasas and local mosques can become instruments for radical messaging, narrowing the interpretive lens of Islam to support violent jihad. In both cases, authority figures, professors, or clerics become gatekeepers of truth. The social institution, once a place of learning or faith, becomes a mechanism of control. A newer dimension of indoctrination is digital amplification. Social media now serves as the megaphone for both movements. Echo chambers on X, formerly Twitter, Reddit, and Telegram create environments where users only encounter confirming opinions. Algorithmic curation reinforces biases, producing digital radicalization. Research from Purdue University in 2022 finds that online platforms magnify emotional narratives and moral outrage, the very tools of indoctrination. Thus, the internet has become not merely a battleground of ideas, but a factory of conviction. What can we learn from these parallels? First, that extremism is not defined by ideology but by method. Whether leftist or Islamist, the mechanisms of indoctrination, emotional manipulation, demonization, and enforced solidarity are universal tools of control. Second, these processes flourish where critical thinking declines. The antidote to indoctrination is not counter-propaganda, but intellectual humility and education that rewards inquiry over ideology. Finally, as societies grow more polarized, recognizing these shared structures of manipulation becomes vital. The danger is not simply in one ideology triumphing, but the erosion of dialogue itself. The survival of democratic discourse depends on our capacity to think critically, resist emotional coercion, and maintain empathy without surrendering reason. In short, the similarities between leftist and Islamic extremist indoctrination reveal a universal truth. Any movement that claims moral certainty at the expense of open inquiry risks becoming what it opposes. Understanding these dynamics is not just an academic exercise, it's a civic necessity. Thank you.